citizen.
Out of many
we are world citizens. Same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voices.
Welcome.
Oh, you know we got
Welcome to another episode of the People Powered Planet podcast, where each week we have solutionaries talking about exciting ways to build a better and more peaceful world. And our podcast is inspired by the incredible guy we made a movie about, The World Is My Country. Melanie and I are the director and producer, and Melanie is the producer of this podcast. And if you get to see that movie, which you can see by just going to theworldismycountry.com, you will see a little bit more about World Citizen Number One, a song and dance man on Broadway who became the first citizen of planet Earth. Now, today we have a very special podcast because today we are part of a Podcasthon with 2,700 podcasts around the world. All of us are doing podcasts simultaneously, and those podcasts are all contributing to nonprofit organizations. Our nonprofit is called Future Wave. WAVE stands for Working for Alternatives to Violence Through Entertainment, and we use entertaining and fun ways to bring us to a better world. Now today we have an especially great guest. We have the Peace Game creator, David Gershon, and he's going to speak to us today about the Peace Moonshot. You know how Kennedy said we're going to put a person on the moon, and even though that seemed impossible, it happened? Well, David happens to feel that it not only is it possible that we make that declaration, we will have world peace, and we'll do it. So he is also the founder of Peace on Earth by 2030, where he's working on creating the tools and structures to be able to manifest that vision, which is such a crucial vision for all of us on the planet at this time. So now, David, he's lectured at Harvard, and he's lectured at Johns Hopkins, and he's advised the United Nations and done so many wonderful things. But he's also, I'd say that his tools for empowering us have ranged from his first Earth run to creating peace games around the world, and particularly the Rotary Peace Game. So before we get into the Rotary Peace Game and the other exciting projects he's doing with his Empowerment Institute, let me first just welcome you, David. Welcome to the People Powered Planet podcast, where the world is our country.
Arthur, thank you for having me. Melanie, good to be with you as well. I'm so happy to be on something called People Powered Planet. That is my aspiration as well. So a lot of alignment here.
I understand you see our film, The World Is My Country.
Very inspirational, beautiful work. I would say it felt very resonant for me because he said yes to a big idea, stepped out of his comfort zone, and made it happen. So I feel very aligned with that. I think many of us have to practice that model. I think the moonshot is an example of what that looks like. Fortunately, I don't have to invent a country to do this. I can just do the world part that he worked on so beautifully. Yes, beautiful film. Good work, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I think to start off with, there's so many exciting things to talk with you about, and we will get into the Rotary Peace Game. But I think we'll start by playing a little clip that came out of your Empowerment Institute, because I think it's such I found it so inspiring and such a way to make us really feel good. Sometimes this world seems, God, so bad we feel like, oh my God, it's hopeless. And so let's take a look at this film.
Humanity is at a critical juncture in our evolution. Unless we rapidly change our trajectory as a species, our civilization will unravel. The question is, how do we change? There are many dedicated and heroic changemakers pouring their hearts and souls into trying to change the world, but they struggle to break through. What if the problem was not the world's unwillingness to change, but but the approaches we use to bring about change? What if how we thought about social change and what people were capable of achieving was the problem? If we wish to change the world, we need to first change the way we think about change. The mindset for a new approach is best described in the provocative Apple ad, "Here's to the crazy ones." They see things differently, are not fond of rules, and have no respect for the status quo. While some may think them as crazy, the ones crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. These are 3 questions the crazy ones must ask if we want to change the world. How do we reinvent social change? How do we reinvent social activism? How do we reinvent the planet? From a social change point of view, the world is a composite of many social systems. The complexity and discord in the world today have placed multiple stresses on these systems, causing them to become unstable and break down. When a social system is not tethered to something that keeps it in place, it can not only break down, it can also break through and evolve to a higher level of performance and social value. In systems theory, this is called second-order change, and in this context, transformative social change. The alternative is first-order change or incremental social change. These 2 approaches to social change can be called social change 1.0 and social change 2.0. 1.0 consists of the traditional social change tools of passing laws, financial incentives, information campaigns, and social protest. Although necessary, it is insufficient in a world that requires fundamental transformation. So if we can achieve the transformative social change needed on our planet through forcing people to change, paying them to change, telling them to change, or demanding they change, what is left? Empowering people to want to change. What empowers people to change is a compelling vision of a better life and the tools to achieve it. And what empowers the crazy ones is the ability to design second-order change solutions that empower lots of people to change. This combination provides the agency necessary for social change 2.0 to flourish. Over the past 40 years, David Gershon, one of the world's leading experts in empowerment and social change, has created 5 second-order change solutions that address the mission-critical issues required for humanity's viability. Each is built around a lever capable of changing the game around that issue. He has also written the definitive book on second-order change, Social Change 2.0. This book empowers the crazy ones with the 5 social change superpowers needed to reinvent the planet. How to empower, transform, innovate, unify, and mobilize. What happens when we integrate these 5 second-order change solutions and 5 social change 2.0 superpowers is an alchemical reaction that changes the game of change. And what emerges is a holistic plan to reinvent the planet. 1. Climate Goal and Strategy, Cool Block Program. By 2030, empower cities around the world and their citizens with the agency and second-order change knowledge to transform the climate paralysis into carbon-neutral cities and breakthrough solutions. 2. Development Goal and Strategy, Imagine Program. By 2030, empower women in the developing world with the agency and second-order change knowledge to transform the cycle of poverty into thriving lives and communities. 3. Peace Goal and Strategy, Peace on Earth by 2030 Game. By 2030, empower a global bottom-up movement of peacemakers with the agency and second-order change knowledge to transform the paradigm of war into peace on Earth. 4. Knowledge Goal and Strategy, Empowerment Institute Center for Reinventing the Planet. By 2030, empower the world's changemakers with the agency and second-order change knowledge to transform the world's insoluble problems into breathtaking opportunities that reinvent the planet. 5. Money Goal and Strategy, Reinventing the Planet Fund. By 2030, empower the world's visionary philanthropists with the agency and second-order change knowledge to transform the trillions of dollars of social change investments into second-order change solutions that reinvent the planet. We find ourselves at a moment in time when the environmental and social stresses are so pronounced that they have become catalysts to accelerate human evolution. In evolutionary biology, this is called punctuated equilibrium, a time when rapid and quantum change suddenly becomes possible. In September 2015, the ambitious UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 were launched. The world is now searching for the means to implement the magnitude and speed of transformative social change these goals demand. This plan to reinvent the planet provides humanity with the means. But it goes beyond that. It allows us to realize our fullest potential as a human species, live in harmony with each other and the Earth, and regain control of our destiny, enabling us to experience hope, passion, and excitement about the future. Please join us for the greatest adventure of our time, reinventing the planet.
Wow, that is so rich. We could talk about every phrase in it for probably a half hour. But first, let's tell us, because you mentioned the moonshot was key. What do you see as the key to this moonshot to actually take this fractured world and create a world that does work for everyone? How can we have this moonshot for peace on Earth by 2030?
Well, that's the ultimate question. And we've been working on that now for some time. It actually began in 1986. The beginning impetus of the moonshot was this passing of the torch of peace around the world, in which we engaged 45 leaders of the world, the president of Russia and America, Gorbachev and Reagan, the two Cold War antagonists, to champion this idea. And 62 countries, 25 million people on the ground, and ABC television and UNICEF, and 1 billion people watching this experience. And what I saw was that there was a possibility to have peace for 86 days, and that we could create durable peace if we learned how to cultivate three capacities: behavioral change, community empowerment, and large system transformation. So the journey for me over the last 4 decades has been moving from how do we get a symbolic event to mobilize the world and create peace on Earth for 86 days into that as a long-term aspiration for making that real. So I would say simply, there's a three-part strategy. A peace game, which distills the 7 practices that we learned from the first Earth Run. The peace zone, which scales that up at a community level. And then the movement building process of building a global movement and aligning humanity's will around a vision, an aspirational, audacious vision of peace on Earth by 2030. So those are the 3 core strategies. That's the history. That's where I got this audacious, crazy idea, and have been working on it ever since.
Wow. So you're saying you did the audacious, crazy thing of having an Earth run, and that it actually connected with global leaders and actually ended up creating a peace for those 86 days?
I am saying that. That's what happened. Yes.
Wow, no war for 86 days on the planet. And wow, that is pretty crazy. And to be a part of that is really wonderful. So let's go through each of the strategies you mentioned. You mentioned the peace game as a part of it. And I know you have you have peace games for various organizations. You have general peace games, and you have particularly a Rotary peace game coming up April 7th to June 2nd. And in fact, you have an ongoing peace game that Melanie and I have been a part of. Tell us a little bit more about the peace games.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, I'm going to keep coming back to your question of how, because I'm a how person. So right now, war is usually seen as, should we say, peace is actually seen as the absence of war. So we define peace by reducing violence, which in fact is a definition of peace. But there's another definition, which is building the social capacities for peace, the skills for peace, the capacity for people to be effective agents of change at a community scale, building cultures of peace at a community level, building cultures of peace at a global level. That's what we really are focusing on. Because if we're always in reaction mode to war, we're really just going to be always in this reactive state, this state of being at the effect of some violent intervention. So we have to think more long term, and we have to think, what are the capacities that will actually make that a viable part of how human civilization works? So the peace game is building these core competencies around the capacity to cooperate, the capacity to find common ground with others, the capacity to look at someone who we might normally other and befriend them, the capacity to develop a sense of generosity towards others, the capacity for finding ways to have compassion and kindness towards others. These are some of the different practices that the peace game teaches. It teaches it in small teams of 3. We call them peace teams. And those peace teams create the social support system, the motivation, and the accountability to follow through and take these actions. So at the end of the day, the peace game is a peace intensive to adopt new behaviors at scale, I might add, because that's what's going to require. And the tipping point is 40 million people. That's 1/2 of 1%. According to complex adapted science, they find that at that point, we can actually start to change what should we call it? The field. A guy named Ilya Prigogine talks about how at that level, the systems start to tip towards a new social norm. So 40 million people is the tipping point for getting peace on earth. If we can get them to practice these practices at a more subtle level, not just going through the game, but actually practice them on a daily basis. So that's the 40 million tipping point.
Wow, so this really kind of shakes up our thinking, because so many of us have been thinking, well, if we just protest enough and we pass the right laws and we do these information campaigns and we have financial incentives, that somehow we can solve these problems. And it seems like we're running backwards. And that you've called first order change.
Correct.
And now you're saying that there's a second order change.
Well, let me define second order change very simply. It's really a compelling vision of the future that pulls someone and the means to achieve it. So when we are creating change based on reacting to a situation like a war, then we're constantly being pulled back into that. Not to say there's not a role for protest or a role for some of these other first order change solutions, but they're dealing with symptoms. They're not dealing with the root cause of change, which is people and how we live our lives, how we think about things. So we have to change our behavior and our thinking. And while that may seem difficult to many, it's actually quite powerful, because if you give people a way to have a better life, they go towards it. So it's a positive vision that pulls people. So the vision that compels people to change is what's going to get the most traction. You will eventually run out of energy when most of your focus is on reacting and you're feeling guilty or you're feeling angry or you're feeling afraid. That is not going to be sustainable for change. But if you find a way to make your life better, your community better, the world better, through a positive attraction, then you go towards it.
I think that's so key, positive attraction. That's kind of what our motive has been. And when I was a young man, uh, and we were facing, the threat of nuclear war. I remember during the Cuban Missile Crisis, meditating and saying, if we ever get out of this alive, I'm going to devote my life to how we can create a better world. And I realized that so many of us have learned that if we visualize what we want in our personal lives, they're much more likely to happen. I mean, again and again, when I visualize what I want, incredible things happen just so often. And I thought, well, then why in the world are we constantly uh, focusing on what we don't want, why don't we focus on what we want? I made a movie. It's called, I worked on the ABC film The Day After about the terrible destruction of nuclear war. I was just a nuclear war researcher, not a top honcho or anything, but boy, I had nuclear war nightmares out of that. And, uh, and then people came to me after that, after 100 million people saw that, and it impacted the whole nation. And they said, well, it didn't stop the arms race because we didn't really show how really terrible it is, the nuclear winter and all that. Um, and I thought, no, my God, it's just more negative is not going to do it. Somehow we've got to create that vision of what we want to move toward and pull us to it. And so I'm so aligned with what you said. So how does the peace game help us create that vision and move toward what we want instead of away from what we don't want?
Let me say something about magnetizing people out of fear. When we magnetize people to change, or we think we're going to magnetize people to change out of fear, what we actually do is paralyze them. Because fear is ultimately a short-term driver. It's a good reaction to something when there's something in front of you. You want to make a change in your direction if you're about to hit a deer and you're driving your car. But in terms of sustaining change, you need to have a positive vision. So what has happened is we paralyze people in the belief that we're actually inspiring them, empowering them with more negativity. The media reinforces that. There's a wonderful movie that came out talking about movies called Tomorrowland. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
So that shows you what it looks like when you paralyze people out of to change out of fear, because people were paralyzed. They actually could predict when the world would end by virtue of how static the fear was that was built. It was sort of unmovable until someone had hope. So, we're bringing hope into the world. And I would say hope is at the end of the day, the foundation of what's going to create change. People have to believe that we can make the world better, that we can be effective as change agents. The moonshot is based on that. It's based on giving people a vision of possibility, a vision of hope. But it's not just wishful thinking about the future or even naive thinking, although one could call Peace on Earth by 2030 naive by some standards, one could say that. But it's really a vision with the means to achieve it. I was just reviewing today a 52-page plan, our blueprint, that lays out in quite a lot of detail exactly how we do this. So it's quite tangible. And what I'm given a little grace because of the first Earth run. So people are willing to at least give me the benefit of the doubt that something like this would be possible in my other experiences. But the practices really are, the vision is that, well, let me share one more puzzle piece about change. So there is a notion, I think it's the simple understanding of the 100th monkey effect, but there's a more sophisticated body of knowledge around that, which is when a certain set of practices are adopted by a certain number of people, they start diffusing. They start diffusing because the behaviors are seen, so new social norms, but they also start diffusing because of this sort of what's called field theory, where the field is just built and it starts diffusing. People just start observing and being aware in some hard to measure way that a new belief is in the system, and they just pick up on it. So people start befriending the other or cooperating. We've seen that happen in smaller ways and larger ways. So we're working on this notion of, for lack of a better term, the 100th monkey effect, where all of a sudden new ideas start diffusing. And there's lots of examples of that. I don't want to go into all the science behind that because it'll be too much for most people, but that's a simple sort of metaphor of the process.
Excellent, excellent. Well, yes, that is clear when you think about the things that have created change in the world. They never began with the establishment, with the establishment picking something new. It's always been the crazy ones, and they are first dismissed and laughed at, and then finally people start to resonate with it, and then sort of like that tuning fork that resonates with all the other tuning forks, it starts becoming the new norm, and that's how we move forward. So tell us a little bit more about the Empowerment Institute you have, and how that Empowerment Institute helps us move into that resonant field of creating and visualizing that world we choose.
I'm happy to use the term tuning fork because that's actually the process. Or like fireflies, one firefly lights up a certain section of the forest, and before you know it, the whole forest is lit up. Yeah, that's the phenomenon of resonance. So the Empowerment Institute has been around some 45 years. My wife and I started it in 1981. And its purpose was really a simple purpose. At the time, there wasn't a lot of thinking around how does one empower individuals to create change in their life or their community or their world. It was mostly, again, reactive thinking. So the empowerment work has been, our core work for some almost 4.5 decades now. What does it do? Well, it works with organizations, it works with cities, it works with individuals, it works with um, all the different spheres of society that are trying to ask the question, how do I make my life or my community or my organization better? What are the means to do that? So that's what the Empowerment Institute does. But our focus really now is pretty honed to this one idea. In the video you showed, I talk about the Reinventing the Planet strategy and the 5 core approaches to that. So women's empowerment, climate, peace, knowledge, and money. And we've now distilled all of those into the Peace Moonshot. Because right now, if we can have a singular focus, that will teach the knowledge. We're raising the financing around that. Implicit in that are the tools to create social change, whatever type of change you wish, from women's empowerment to environmental change. So the focus really now is exclusively on the Peace Moonshot.
The Peace Moonshot. Wow. Okay, so I want to be a part of that Peace Moonshot. How do I join you in taking this shot up to the moon, that moon of the that if we were on the moon looking at the Earth and we saw all the problems, we'd say we want to have that Earth shot where that Earth comes to that fruition. How do we take that moonshot?
It's really simple. The first step is to be part of the solution, which is to play the peace game. If you're a Rotarian, we have a peace game starting in April. There's no charge. It's April 7th, I think, through June 2nd is 9 meetings, 1 hour. If you are an individual that's not part of Rotary, we are engaged right now. You and Melanie were in this class yesterday, and that's another version of the game, which is for the general public. So we're now starting meeting 2 next Wednesday, but you can come and join us there. I think there'll be some links in the chat. And what that will do is several things. It'll give you the tools. It'll connect you with like-minded people who are asking the same kinds of questions that you might be asking, which is what's possible? How do I make that change? It'll inspire you to be around people who hold that intention and that vision. And it'll give you a sense of deep and profound hope, because everyone on that journey is holding the intention. They're part of the 40 million that are stepping up and saying, I'm not going to just spend my time complaining or watching media and getting depressed. I'm going to be bringing the change.
When I joined your Peace Game meeting, I came into it with so many things I had to do and so on, and a little bit of that fractured energy. And I found in the game that you began to pair us with people, and I began to find myself paired with a perfect person to help me kind of center down and tune into the spiritual power that really has inspired my journey from the beginning. But to return to that root and return to that calm place, and that place where we move into the noosphere of knowing that indeed the vision that we are creating will happen. I mean, we will have peace on earth. And I've kind of joked that there's no disadvantage to visualizing and knowing that we're going to move into a peaceful future, because if just by some slim chance we're wrong and the world destroys itself, there'll be no one left to say, I told you so. So the only really rational way to live is to live in that world where we know we can create that. That's what keeps us moving. That's what gives us the energy. That's what energizes this moonshot. So what a thrill to be part of your moonshot.
Well, when I saw your film, The World is My Country, I said, okay, now I know this man. I know this man, not the man Gary, but the man Arthur, because I saw that if that was a film that you were dedicating your life to creating and a core part of how you are telling your story in the world, then you are a person of like mind, an idealist who believes in the future, who sees the possibility and goes towards it, who isn't trapped in the negative or the fear state. So I feel very aligned with you as well, my friend.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, one of the as I've been seeking, as you have, for what are the actual tools and mechanisms and so on we can use. One of the things that Gary Davis said was he said, you know, virtually every constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says we the people create governments. And he said, so why in the heck are we banging our heads against the wall trying to convince and beg and plead in that first order change for our governments to make peace when they can't? They're dedicated to the part, not the whole. They stay in power because they're protecting us against them in a violent world, and they're all bullying their way to try to who's on top. And the actual reality is, if we the people create government, then why don't we just go ahead and interactively, with some of the amazing new digital tools and other things, start creating an integrative new, be the Thomas Jeffersons and James Madisons and Dolly, of creating a new, even better way to run the world. And one of the things that's excited me on my journey recently is reading this book, Plurality.
Yes.
And it's a book by Glenn Wei and Audrey Tang. And Audrey Tang is the digital minister of Taiwan. And what excited me about her, in our movie, we see Gary talk about how we could have this interactive, bottom-up, people-powered governance sort of based around Bucky Fuller's concept. Bucky Fuller said, don't fight the old thing, just create the new and let everybody gravitate toward it. Well, create that new thing of that interactive governance. And they actually made it work. They actually have been able to, it's an incredible model. If you go to our theworldismycountry.com and click on the podcast page, you'll see an interview with Audrey Tang where what they've done is people on opposite sides of issues, people who hated each other, people who couldn't come together, they created a new system where we interact in a pro-social way, where using these digital tools, we actually solve incredible number of problems and actually come together to create the regulations and rules. Law is basically just what is the will of the people, to really codify that will of the people in a way that actually works. So I find that as a sort of having the kind of kernel of an exciting way that maybe this is a clear way we can take that moonshot. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, before I talked about the tipping point of 40 million, one half of 1%, but there's two tipping points in the moonshot, and the other is 10,000 cities. That's how we organize civilization. Civilization right now has 10,000 communities of 50,000 or more. That's how the UN defines the number of cities on the planet. And so we are building peace zones in all of those locations. We're going to be delivering them through Rotary. Rotary's partnership is going to be helping us through their 46,000 clubs to get peace zones in 25% of the communities that they're located in, as well as working with other organizations. And at the heart of a peace zone is a collaborative culture that brings together the private, public, and civic sector. So collaboration is at the heart of what a new city state, a new planet needs to look like. And how do you do that in a way that also starts to honor this notion of democratic input? And I think that the plurality book, which I've also spend time reading. I don't read that many books that attract my attention that much. They don't tend to have a lot of solutions. They tend to be focused more on problems. And then the last chapter, there's a solution. This whole book was a solution. So I was finding it very attractive and very much looking at how I could integrate it into the peace zone model, because we need to get a new governance model. Once we start to build these cultures of peace, then we need to have a good anchor for the governance model. I'm going to Taiwan as part of the Rotary convention, and I hope to really study more while I'm there, how this model has worked. But yes, I'm not surprised that you discovered that book, and I'm not surprised that you're looking for better models of governance, particularly at a local level, which is really where we can have impact.
Wow, wow. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned cities, because the other thing that Gary Davis, world citizen number one, did was to start and invent the global cities movement. He called it mondialization, and starting with Cahors, France, they had thousands of cities that declared themselves world cities and began to create that network. And one of the things he said is that nation states aren't real. They're political fictions. If you look at the planet in outer space, you can't see the border between Canada and the US or Mexico or any of these. They're just lines people drew on maps. But you look at that planet and the night sky, and you do see cities. You see all these lights of the cities. They're real. Cities are real. And by focusing the world governance on how mayors and cities come together, cities are solutionary. They have to actually solve problems like, how do we get the roads working and the sewers working and all these things. And we need to shift from who's right and who's wrong and blaming this person, that person, to how do we come together with solutions.
I want to say one thing about cities. Um, so the question is, how do you crack the code of empowering a city? So in my journey, I've worked with several hundred cities over the last few decades all over the world. We worked with some 350 cities during the Earth Run. So I've become a student of the form of a city. And one of the things that I've seen is that there's a need to develop a new concept from tragedy of the commons to the power of the commons.
Mm.
We have to reinvent this notion of the commons. And the way that the tragedy of the commons is currently playing out is all of the polarity between all the nonprofits, between the government agencies, between the businesses. They're all doing their thing, but they haven't learned how to cooperate together for the common good. They haven't found a way to optimize each other's aspirations. And so we are building this new sense of the commons, and where every person invests a little of their time. We ask them to invest 10% of their time to strengthen the commons so we can empower the whole commons. So it's a whole new model we're building in peace zones. And once we start to reinvent the structure of how cities organize themselves, they're going to have a whole new life. It isn't just that the world is organized by cities, but cities themselves have to reinvent themselves. The cities haven't done much reinvention in 100 years. I think the digital democracy idea that Audrey and her colleague have created in plurality is a positive step in that direction. And we need to then engage the people beyond just how do they engage with government. So
Right.
a very big conversation, more than we have time for right now, I suspect.
And I know some other places have started to adopt some of these digital technology tools of governance, including in California and elsewhere. So that's a whole nother discussion. Let me turn it over to Melanie. Now, Melanie, by the way, she handles the Q&A. She's an extraordinary producer, and I'm just so grateful for all the work she has done. And so without further ado, here's Melanie.
Well, thank you for those words, Arthur. And my goodness, yes, the peace game, the moonshot. This is incredible. I mean, I am looking to be a new person. I want to be the same joy, but I want to exude peace. So when you meet me, you're like, oh, peace, peaceful. Wow, that's what I'm hoping for. I can't wait to go through the game. I'll let you know how it goes. But so far, so good. And just there's a part of it. The game is really easy. It's an app. You could just do it all through your phone, but then there's the online part you want to do too. But there's different options. And like David said, there's also there's the Rotary ones for those Rotarians on. So just a big plug for the Peace Game. I mean, what a better thing to do than just to add to the great vibration of peace. So I highly encourage everyone to do it. So thank you, David, and thank you, Gail, for that, for all the work she's done, and your collaboration's been incredible. Okay, so yes, we do have questions, and I will go to our first question. Hans.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm here sitting in South Africa. I'm Hans Friedrich Geiler, president of the Rotary Club Burg-Kapfenberg in Austria, in Europe. And I'm sort of stumbled into your meeting because actually I should have been flying, but there were some people on strike, so I'm stuck in South Africa. And I was able to get into the meeting a little bit unprepared. Nevertheless, David and Arthur, thank you for your inputs, and I was really amazed what's going on. But the first question I had, or an issue, because now we have this peace game, and I don't have any idea about it, how it looks like. But how can we get an input, or how can we penetrate against presidents are now using their own platforms, and influencers are telling us now in the crisis in the Middle East that everything is fine in Dubai, and all that social media stuff getting banked on the people. How and how can we penetrate that with such a tool? But I think it is a viable try to get people into thinking about peace with something. But there are so many inputs from the outside. So how can it work?
You're asking the right question, Hans. I mean, there are many right questions, but this is a very important question, which is, given all of the media and all of the power that we project onto our leaders, how do we create change itself when we have that kind of experience? And ultimately, we have to build a systems level intervention. It's not going to happen out of just a peace game by itself, but a peace game combined with transforming communities. So transforming individuals, transforming communities, and ultimately then building a movement around a positive vision, such as we did during the first Earth Wind. And when you put those three ingredients together, and you start to have organizations like Rotary, who is committed to peace, I would call them the #1 peace building organization on the planet, which has already basically created a kind of a mycelium network of peace across all the cities of the world. You have a potential for scale for such a intervention. And then there are other organizations that also can bring value. So when you put all those elements together, you start to have the makings of a strategy and an intervention. It is not going to be a short-term solution. The short-term solution is going to be probably running out of oil, and Trump and others saying this is crazy. But that's still not going to change the fundamental system conditions that created the war in the first place. So we have to think more long-term. Our vision is to make all of those shifts over the next 5 years and sort of, if you will, create a new nervous system for humanity that defaults to peace, so that when there is conflict, our first reaction is not war. Our first reaction is learning how to find common ground, how to befriend the other. So when these practices become new social norms at scale, you begin to have the mechanism for a change that can be lasting. So in the short term, we just have to deal with the noise in the system and the pain in the system. It's also a catalyst. My experience is when we go one end of the spectrum, we create a polarity that forces us to go to the other. So within the next months, we're going to see a lot of energy towards peace. We're already seeing that now. So that's my answer, short answer, and short term and long term answer.
I love that answer. Yes, that's what I feel too, that this is getting more people going towards peace, more people becoming active in the community. And I love the part about collaboration. I'm a big fan of Dr. Rian Eisler. I always try to mention her and the partnership societies, partnerism, and going towards that type of system. So when war doesn't even come in your mind. You don't even think of war as a possibility. So I love that. Okay, let's go to Richard. Richard.
Thank you very much, Melanie and Arthur, and really great to see you again, David. As a former mayor, I fully agree that it is at the municipal level that we can have our influence. And I know you're busy working with Rotary clubs to influence them through the peace game. I'm just wondering, at the municipal level, I've got my own city to endorse the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I'm getting them to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. What can I do to get them to be involved and motivated with your peace game and Moonshot? And again, it's how to motivate people, because again, Rotarians will say, it is a moonshot. This isn't going to work. But I fully agree that fear is not the answer, that we need to look at the root causes. So back
It's
to you.
interesting. It's interesting. There was a presentation on Peace Day by Patrick Eakes, who's a Rotary International board member. And in his presentation on the Moonshot, he introduced the Moonshot for the first time to Rotary International. And he and Larry Lunsford will be introducing it in Taiwan to the whole global community. So what Patrick said was audacious, yes, but doable. And why doable? Because the tools are strong and because Rotary can scale it. So that's the big picture on the Moonshot itself. Vis-a-vis cities, I mean, at least from a Rotarian perspective, others may have other perspectives. But one thing I'll just add to that Rotary brings is that Rotary has spent 100 and something years diffusing a civic infrastructure that hasn't been fully activated. And we think we can activate it so something could happen that hasn't happened before. I mean, Rotary at scale for peace is a profound opportunity. Vis-a-vis, how do you tell a story to a mayor? How do you convey the power of what a peace zone can be? I mean, that's a process, but fundamentally, what we look for is a Rotary Club or some other organization to go through a very simple exercise of bringing together the sectors, the business, the public, and the private sector, and to ask a simple question: how can we better cooperate together to achieve the things that our community currently can't achieve because we're all operating separately? When you bring them together, you have a potential to do something that can't currently be achieved. And that's not a complicated ask. We're not talking about peace zone. We're not even talking about peace. We're talking about the practice of peace, which is cooperation. So we've designed a bunch of processes to enable that cooperation to happen. So that's a starting point. More, I could say more, but that's a beginning.
That's beautiful. Audacious, but doable. And you and Gail did the Earth Run in '86, the first Earth Run. And I watched when you join and you get in the Peace Game app, you'll see the beautiful video. I mean, it's original footage of where the torch went all around the world, and it's so inspiring. I was like, so beautiful. So that's incredible. And then audacious, but doable. The first step is to realize it can be done and know that it can be done. So David, this is my chance to just lots of gratitude, lots and lots of gratitude. So wonderful. I'm excited about the Peace Game, being in the Peace Game and spreading the word about the Peace Game, because I I think this is so valuable. People stop themselves too quickly saying, yeah, but no, behavioral change, us changing, and we can do this. So thank you, David. Thank you so much. Kudos to your wife, Gail, and back to Arthur. Arthur, take it away. Please.
Melanie, before we leave
Oh.
you, let me thank
Yes.
you for the good work that you're doing. No, receive. And I also want to, I just want to affirm one point you made, which is hope. At the end of the day, we have to be people of hope. One of my main jobs is not strategy. It's not design of tools. It's being a faith keeper. That's who I see myself to be. I think Gary Davis was a faith keeper as well. And any of us who are going to move into the future, who wish to move into the future, who have the potential to move others into the future, have to be faith keepers, because it's so easy to give up on ourselves as a species. But and just one more plug for Rotary. Rotary is an organization of hope. It has been designed over this last 110 years to bring hope to the world. So that's why I'm so excited to partner with Rotary, and why I chose actually to become a Rotarian at the end of the day. Arthur.
Beautiful. Arthur. Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
Melanie.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. An organization to bring hope to the world. I enjoyed very, very much going to the Rotary International Convention when it was in Calgary, which was near enough for me to get there, and put together a terrific booth for the Rotary E-Club of World Peace, and was part of that Peace Park, speaking at that amazing Peace Park that Al Jubitz helped us put all together. And I'd be very excited to come to the meeting in Taipei, and maybe to see whether there's some way even to connect with Audrey Tang while I'm there. But I hope that we're going to find a sponsor who's going to make that possible, so that we can financially do that. Anyway, I'm just so hopeful and buoyed by this whole discussion with you. I think this is really a phenomenal beginning, and I hope that we're going to be continuing to work together as we actually involve the tools necessary for us to together create that people-powered planet that we know is ahead. And so, thank you so much for being a part of this. We have club socials where all of you get to talk with each other and tell us about what you're doing and enjoy this social. And then we have great speakers like David. And if you're on the list, you'll get to hear about all the other ones coming up. So I hope you'll join. I hope you'll you get the first 2 months free if you officially join the club. And then after that, it's only $10 a month. And that helps make possible more of these podcasts and bring you great guests. And before I close, I want to see if David has one last word for everyone.
I think when we started, before we went on live, we did a meditation. And I think I'd like us to close with a visualization. I'd like to just invite us all to see a world where people are cooperating for the common good across your community, where people find that they wish to know the other versus separate themselves from people who are different from them, where they want to enhance their ability to be more culturally literate, where they find in their hearts love and kindness for one's fellow human beings. See that world. That is the world that we can create, that we are creating. That is our birthright to create. Feel yourself at peace in that world. Look around at the trees. Look in people's eyes. See how they smile at one another. See how they feel a sense of equanimity. Melanie, joy plus peace, great combo. See lots of melodies, joy plus peace in this world. This is the world that we have the potential to create. And in my world, I already am living in that world, because that is the world I'm creating every day. So I invite you all to enter that world. I call it Peaceland. So enjoy Peaceland. That is a gift that we give to ourselves and to all of our fellow human beings. And thank you, Arthur, Thank you, Melanie, for inviting me. Thank you for creating such a great space. People-powered planet. That's my new mantra.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you for that incredible, wonderful meditation. And yes, let's move forward as fellow inhabitants of the people-powered planet.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.